Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 2, titled Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons, Text 22. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Nitya Atmavyaya Shuddha Nitya Atmavyaya Shuddha Sarvaga Sarvavit Paraha Sarvaga Sarvavit Para Date Sva Atmano Lingam Date Sva Atmano Lingam Mayaya Visrajan Gunan Mayaya Visrajan Gunan Nitya Atmavyaya Shuddha Nitya Atmavyaya Shuddha Sarvaga Sarvavit Para Sarvaga Sarvavit Para Date Sva Atmano Lingam Date Sva Atmano Lingam Mayaya Visrajan Gunan Mayaya Visrajan Gunan Nitya Atmavyaya Shuddha Sarvaga Sarvavit Para Date Sav Atmano Lingam Mayaya Visrajan Gunan Nitya Atmavyaya Shuddha Sarvaga Sarvavit Para Date Sav Atmano Lingam Mayaya Visrajan Gunan Nitya Eternal Atma Spirit Soul Avyaya Inexhaustible Shuddha with no material tinge Sarvagaha qualified to go anywhere in the material or spiritual worlds. Sarvavit, full of knowledge. Paraha, transcendental to material conditions. Date, accepts. Asau, that Atma, or living being. Atmanaha, of the self. Lingam, a body. Mayaya, by the material energy. Visrajan, creating. Gunan, various material qualities. Translation. The spirit soul, the living entity, has no death, for he is eternal and inexhaustible. Being free from material contamination, he can go anywhere in the material or spiritual worlds. He is fully aware and completely different from the material body, but because of being misled by misuse of his slight independence, he is obliged to accept subtle and gross bodies created by the material energy and thus be subjected to so-called material happiness and distress. Therefore, no one should lament for the passing of the spirit soul from the body. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Hiranyakashipu very intelligently described the position of the soul. The soul is never the body, but is always completely different from the body. Being eternal and inexhaustible, the soul has no death. But when the same pure soul desires to enjoy the material world independently, he is placed under the conditions of material nature and must therefore accept a certain type of body and suffer the pains and pleasures thereof. This is also described by Krishna in Bhagavad-Gita 13:22. Karanam gunasangosya sad asad yoni janmasu. The living entity is born in different families or species of life because of being infected by the modes of material nature. When conditioned by material nature, the living entity must accept a certain type of body, which is offered by nature under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati. Brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. Bhagavad-Gita 18:61. The body is just like a machine, and according to the living entity's karma, he is offered a particular type of machine to move here and there under the control of material nature. This continues until he surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mam eva ye prapadyante, mayam etam tarantite. Until he surrenders, the conditioned soul is carried from life to life by the arrangement of material nature. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulam Militam Yenam Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatan Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Paladan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dhinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gauda Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Again, the translation. The spirit soul, the living entity, has no death, for he is eternal and inexhaustible. Jai Shri Shri Krishna Balaram, Shri Shri Radha Shyam Sundar, Shri Shri Gaurnitai. Being free from material contamination, he can go anywhere in the material or spiritual worlds. He is fully aware and completely different from the material body, but because of being misled by misuse of his slight independence, he is obliged to accept subtle and gross bodies created by the material energy and thus be subjected to so-called material happiness and distress. Therefore, no one should lament for the passing of the spirit soul from the body. Hare Krishna. I'm kind of overwhelmed with the responsibility of speaking in this place, especially in front of so many senior devotees. I'm actually quite embarrassed to try to give this class. I pray for all of your blessings and kindness on me. So does anyone remember who's speaking this verse? It was mentioned in the purport. This verse is spoken by Hiranyakashipu. Prabhupada said he's speaking very intelligently on the position of the soul, which is an amazing thing. Every day we're singing in the temple twice. We're singing Namaste Narasimhaya Pralada Lada Daine Hiranyakashipu Vaksha Silatanka Nakalaye. We're glorifying Lord Nrsingadev for destroying the demon Hiranyakashipu, for clawing his stone-like chest with his nails, and for, like in the last verse, there's a translation, something like he's crushing him like a fly. So Hiranyakashipu is one of the greatest demons of the Bhagavatam. His name, Hiranyakashipu, I think the last few speakers have all mentioned. Hiranya means gold, and Kashipu means soft bedding. And so, the story of Lord Nrsingadev killing Hiranyakashipu, protecting his devotee Prahlad, it's very wonderful for us to remember and meditate on. Therefore, we're singing this song. Hiranyakashipu, he like embodies very bad qualities, the qualities of being attached to gold or to wealth and to sex life. And maybe some of us have experienced those are practically the greatest impediments in our spiritual life. Like Lord Chaitanya prays, Nadanam na janam na sundarim, by renouncing, being able to be renounced from wealth and beautiful opposite sex, followers, that's the mark of purity. And so we're aspiring for that, we're struggling for that. And so we can meditate on this story, this pastime of the Lord killing Hiranyakashipu, and pray that the Lord will kill those bad qualities in us also. Because to whatever extent we're attached to those things, that's a great impediment to our spiritual life. So Hiranyakashipu is not exactly our acharya. He's not the person that we're looking up to. Maybe just the opposite. But here he is speaking so beautifully on philosophy. Mother Parvati could ask him to give the Bhagavad-Gita class. He's speaking so perfectly about the difference between the body and the soul. The spirit soul has no death, for he is eternal and inexhaustible. Being free from material contamination, he can go anywhere in the material or spiritual worlds. He is fully aware and completely different from the material body, but because of being misled by misuse of his slight independence, he is obliged to accept subtle and gross bodies created by the material energy, and thus be subjected to so-called material happiness and distress. Therefore, no one should lament for the passing of the spirit soul from the body. What wonderful transcendental knowledge from Hiranyakashipu. I think if you were to speak to so many great scholars and philosophers and scientists, they may not have this depth of understanding. If you want to say to people in the modern world, you're not the body, you're the spirit soul, the soul is eternal, life comes from life, you may get a lot of arguments about that. People may not appreciate or understand those things. But here's Hiranyakashipu, very intelligently describing the position of the soul, Prabhupada said. So there were just a couple of points I thought to make about this. One point is, we should be very careful who we hear from, because there are many people in the world, many great philosophers, scholars, scientists, politicians. They may be able to speak some truth, even some very profound truth, but by their overall character, they're not worth following. And so we should be very careful about accepting their influence. We've seen, maybe some of us have experienced, sometimes devotees may get a little interested or enamored with some type of knowledge spoken outside of like the literature of our acharyas. Maybe, there's a philosopher or a scientist, a politician. That's a big topic maybe these days. They may get a little bit enamored or interested. Wow, or a psychologist. We've seen devotees become kind of absorbed in psychology. But we should be careful. We should be careful if people are not pure in their behavior, if people aren't following regulative principles, if people aren't following some sadhana, if people aren't connected to a bona fide spiritual master in disciplic succession, we should be very careful how we accept their influence. And we've seen sometimes, there may be a very intelligent, great person, and they may have some attractive knowledge, and devotees may, be inclined to hear from those people, but it may be a razor's edge, and it may not always be favorable. And I think maybe we've seen that. Devotees can become bewildered if they're hearing too much from the non-devotees. I thought here from the Nectar of Instruction, just our basic instructions. The Text 2 of the Upadeshamrita, Atyahara prayasyascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangas chalolyam cha sadbir bhaktam vinashati. Devotional service is spoiled when we eat more than necessary or collect more funds than required, when we over-endeavor for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain, talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters, practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. And number 5 is associating with worldly-minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And 6, being greedy for mundane achievements. So Hiranyakashipu he's an interesting example. He actually has some very profound knowledge to share. But he falls in this category ultimately. He's a worldly-minded person, not interested in Krishna consciousness. And then the third verse, Utsahan nishchayat dharyat tat karma pravartanat sangatyagat satovrite sadbhir bhaktir prashidyati. There are 6 principles favorable. I think we all know these, but nice to hear again and again. Being enthusiastic, endeavoring with confidence, being patient, acting according to regulative principles such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. And again, abandoning the association of non-devotees and following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. So especially on this point of giving up the association of non-devotees. By the way, I've always thought it's interesting that when Rupa Goswami is describing the unfavorable things to be avoided and the favorable things to be accepted, in both cases he talks about abandoning the association of non-devotees. It's not exactly abandon the association and accept the association of devotees. In both times he says abandon the association of non-devotees. So Prabhupada writes, in order to be successful in devotional service, one must give up the association of undesirable people. This includes karmis, jnanis, yogis, and other non-devotees. Once Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asked by one of his householder devotees about the general principles of Vaishnavism, as well as the general routine activities of the Vaishnava, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately replied, does anyone remember? Asat Sangatyag e Vaishnavachar. Characteristically, a Vaishnav is one who gives up the association of worldly people or non-devotees. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has therefore recommended Tarera Charana Seva Bhakta Sanevas. One has to live in the company of pure devotees and execute the regulative principles laid down by the previous acharyas, the 6 Goswamis, namely Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. If one lives in the association of devotees, there is little chance of associating with non-devotees. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness is opening many centers just to invite people to live in the company of devotees and practice the regulative principles of spiritual life. So that was the first point I was thinking to make. We should be very careful who we hear from, because even non-devotees may have some knowledge. And then conversely, the other point I thought to make is that even gold may be found in a filthy place. And so it may be that that Krishna may speak through someone that is not in devotional service. And if we're sincere and we're astute, we may be able to hear that message also. And the example I thought of is in the life of Bilvamangal Thakur. He was addicted to seeing a prostitute. And everybody knows the story. There was an incident where, because of the weather, it was extremely difficult for him to visit the prostitute, and he crossed a river, and the prostitute, when he finally made it to her house, she was astonished, and she said something like, if you had just a fraction of the determination to serve Krishna as you do to come, see me, you would be a great devotee. And so that prostitute may not have been of very high character, but Bilvamangal Thakur, he immediately accepted that as like an instruction from Krishna. And so in that way, it may be like that a good instruction may come, some knowledge may come, even from a less than ideal place. And similarly in the Bhagavatam, in the 11th canto, there's the description of the 24 types of gurus. And also one of the gurus there is Pingala, the prostitute. And what we learned from her is she was engaged in her profession, and she was frustrated by the material nature, and by that frustration she developed a very wonderful detachment and renunciation. And so there was something wonderful to be learned there. So so those were some points I thought we could make in this connection to Hiranyakashipu speaking so beautifully and perfectly about the spirit soul. Adi Purush Prabhu yesterday spoke very nicely. He said the point was that Dharma is diminished when people speak religious principles without following them. And he made the point very nicely, it was great, that Hiranyakashipu, he had some intellectual understanding that you're not the body. We're given this body by material nature according to our previous activities, and we should do dharma. We should be religious without being unnecessarily attached to pleasure and pain in this world. But Hiranyakashipu himself, he lacks some realization in terms of the knowledge that he's speaking, because he himself can't follow that. In these verses, he's consoling his nephews who are aggrieved because their father Hiranyaksha was killed by Lord Varahadev. And he's, the theoretical idea is excellent. If you had a funeral or something, he could give the class, because this is exactly the type of speech, that enlightened people can give. But Hiranyakashipu, he's completely irreligious. The story is that, in retaliation out of anger for the Lord killing his brother, and in his ambition to take over the universe and destroy the Lord, he tries to destroy the Vedic culture by killing Brahmins and cows, cutting down the fruit trees, and basically doing whatever he can to try to destroy the Vedic processes of religion and sacrifice. So that's not the behavior of an enlightened person. I mean, that's like the most horrible behavior you can think of. And when his own son becomes a Hare Krishna devotee, he's not detached and thinking, somehow just by the force of karma and by the force of time, we're all put in different circumstances, and we should be detached. Even my son isn't the son that I wish he was. Somehow he tries to kill his son. So he's lacking some realization. We can appreciate knowledge coming from a filthy place. At the same time, we should be careful about not being overly influenced by people who have knowledge but who don't have good behavior. So I think I will try to say a few things about Ramanujacharya. Today is the disappearance day of Ramanujacharya. As far as I understand, this year is the 1000th anniversary of the appearance of Ramanujacharya. When Ramanujacharya was young, he was taught by a teacher named Yadav Prakash. Actually, we should start from another point. We all know the spiritual history of India is that in previous ages, one of the important types of sacrifice was animal sacrifice. There's many descriptions in the Bhagavatam, like in relation to Maharaj Yudhisthira, he did so many horse sacrifices. I think it's in relation to Maharaj Prickett. It said that, that the horse sacrifices done by Maharaj Prickett were so beautiful and so enlivening that even the demigods were present at those sacrifices. Maharaj Prithu is famous for doing, I think, 99 horse sacrifices. And it's difficult for us to understand what that was. Srila Prabhupada said, he writes in the first canto, it's a great misconception to think that these animal sacrifices involved violence to animals. And in the conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Chand Kazi, Mahaprabhu challenges the Kazi and says, how can you kill your mother and your father, the cow and the bull? You're eating your mother and father. That's a very horrible thing. And the Chand Kazi, he comes back and says the same thing that even today they will say when this discussion comes up about cow killing. Even in the Vedas, there's this animal killing. So Prabhupada writes, that's a great misconception. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, therefore, in the Kali Yuga, animal sacrifice is completely forbidden, because there's no Brahmins that can do it properly. In the previous age, the animal sacrifice was something that practically we have no experience of. They were, by the potency of their chanting of mantras, the Brahmins were reviving the animals and giving them new bodies. I remember in the Bhagavatam it says in relationship with Maharaj Prithu that when he was doing the horse sacrifices, it generated a very pleasing, very auspicious atmosphere, which is absolutely not the atmosphere that would be created if there was a violence to the animals. So the point is that there's this tension and misconception with regard to animal sacrifice. And over time, the animal sacrifice was not being done properly. And there was abuse and violence to animals. And it was becoming a very widespread phenomenon. So much so, and people were using religious scripture to justify animal sacrifice. So much so that the Lord incarnated as Buddha, and the main preaching of the Buddha was to forget the Vedas and to take as your main religious principle the principle of nonviolence. So the people were arguing that on the basis of the Vedas we can do violence to animals and we can kill and eat them, I guess. So Buddha he said, better you just forget the Vedas. And main thing is you should be nonviolent. So the advantage was that the violence to animals was curbed or stopped. But the authority of the Vedas was lost. And so the story of Ramanuja is that he comes in this history. After Buddha came Shankaracharya, who taught a type of covered Buddhism. So people were accustomed to the atheistic principles of the Buddha, but they were rejecting the Vedas. So Shankaracharya reintroduced the authority of the Vedas, but he explained the Vedas in a way that covered their real intention with an impersonal philosophy. And so the great Vaishnav sampradayas, including that of Ramanujacharya, came to further the evolution of Vedic knowledge by also establishing the supremacy of God, the necessity of the soul to worship and serve God. So just a few stories of Ramanujacharya. in his youth, he was taught by a teacher named Yadav Prakash. And the reason that I just tried to tell this history is they say Yadav Prakash was an impersonalist. He was a very, very brilliant, talented scholar and a great teacher, but he didn't accept the personal idea. And so Ramanujacharya, he was a very brilliant young boy and very naturally devotional. They, according to the Sri Sampradaya, the name Ramanuja, Anuja can mean brother, or it can also mean follower. Ramanuja is, so Anuja means like the brother of Lord Ram. And so one understanding is that Ramanujacharya is an incarnation of Lakshman, the brother of Ram. So he was naturally very devotional. There was one day, his teacher did not accept that the absolute truth is a person. And one day when he was describing something about the Lord, he described that the Lord, I think the eyes of the Lord were red like the behind of a monkey. If we have any experience, we see in Vrindavan, the behind of the monkey has a very bright red color. And so when Yadav Prakash, when he described like that, it says that Ramanujacharya, he was giving massage to his teacher. And when that description was given, it pained Ramanujacharya so much that he began crying. And the teacher, he said, "Why are you crying?" He said, in a respectful, humble way, because of course it's the teacher and the disciple, Ramanujacharya said, "This is not the best translation that you've given. A better translation is to explain the same Sanskrit words can be translated to say that the Lord is reddish like a lotus flower." And that's the more beautiful explanation. I don't remember exactly the detail, but the point was he had explained these things in such a beautiful, devotional, personal way. Actually, his teacher became threatened by Ramanujacharya. He realized, actually, this boy is so brilliant, and he's so devotional and so powerful. If he becomes prominent, he can influence so many people to give up the impersonal idea. So actually the teacher at one point, he made a plot to kill Ramanujacharya. They said, okay, we're going out for preaching. And so they brought Ramanujacharya on a trip, and their intention was to kill him. Someone had told Ramanujacharya that this was going to happen. So at one point, Ramanujacharya, he made an excuse and said, "Excuse me, I just have to answer nature's call." And he left their association and he ran away. And then he was all alone in the forest. He saw a couple, who saw that he was a young boy lost in the forest. They said, "Where are you going?" And he said, "Oh, I have to go back to my village. I think that village is Kanchipur." So they said, "Yes, we're going there also." And so they brought him. And when they arrived at the village, that couple disappeared. And the story is that Ramanujacharya understood that was Ram and Sita who had come to personally take him back. Later, Ramanujacharya, he met Yamunacharya, who was the great guru and spiritual teacher at that time. And he served him in his home, and he got mercy from that Yamunacharya. There's also a story that there was a disciple of Yamunacharya who was very, very advanced in devotion, but by his family background, he was born a Shudra. But Ramanujacharya accepted that person because he appreciated his devotional qualities. And so he didn't mind for the external feature that person was born in a Shudra family, but he appreciated the substance of who he was. At one point, it says that Ramanujacharya, he humbly approached that devotee from a Shudra background, and he said, "Please, I surrender to you. You are my guru." And that man was, he felt horrible. He said, "How can I be your guru? I'm just a Shudra person, and you're a very high-class Brahmin that's very intelligent and very, very learned. So how can I be your guru?" And Ramanuja said, No, by the quality of your devotion, you're definitely my superior, and I want to take instruction from you. Please give me some instruction." And so that very simple devotee, he just gave an instruction. Every day you should bring a pot of water to the temple for the service of the Lord. And Ramanujacharya, he really appreciated that instruction, just simple to do some simple devotional service for the deity. And he took it very seriously, and they say he was always bringing water for the deity as a way of following that instruction. Later, there came word that Yamunacharya was leaving his body. And so Ramanujacharya, he traveled to the place where Yamunacharya was leaving his body. And the story may be told in different ways, but I think it's understood that Yamunacharya had just left his body, or was just on the verge of leaving his body, when Ramanujacharya arrived there. And Yamunacharya, his hand was in a very interesting position. His hand was in a position such that like 3 of his fingers were tucked in and 2 of his fingers were stretched out. And so Ramanujacharya inquired from the other disciples. They said, is this a normal position for his hand? And they said, no, this is a very unique, movement for his hand. We haven't seen this before. And so Ramanujacharya, he meditated, and he said, yes, I can understand that Yamunacharya has 3 wishes. And so it's my desire to fulfill those 3 wishes. And forgive me, I'm going to have to read them because this is too interesting and too difficult for me to remember. Ramanujacharya, he said, I will protect the people in general who are deluded by impersonalism, by bestowing upon them the nectar of surrender at the lotus feet of Narayan. He declared that in front of the body of Yamunacharya. And when he did that, one of the fingers, which was previously down, it lifted up. Then he said, for the well-being of the world, I will prepare a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra that will establish the Supreme Person as the ultimate reality. And when he said that, another one of the fingers went up. And then he said, and in order to honor Parasaha Muni, who in ancient times established the relation between jivas, living entities, and Ishvara, the Supreme Person, I shall name one of my disciples who is greatly learned and devoted after him. And at that declaration, the 3rd finger went up. And so all of the devotees were astonished at this and appreciated the power of Ramanujacharya and his great qualification. My understanding is Ramanujacharya was then designated as the Acharya, but it says he didn't immediately accept the post of Acharya after Yamunacharya passed away. He spent 2 years studying, serving the devotees, learning from the devotees before he officially accepted the post of the Acharya. Very interesting point. Just a couple of more quick stories we'll try to tell. Now, the chronology is not very clear to me, please excuse me, but there's one incident where Ramanujacharya was told to accept mantra. He was learning from one guru who said that actually the most qualified person to give you the mantra diksha is staying in another place. And that place was 100 kilometers away, and so he encouraged Ramanujacharya to go there, which he did. And when he went there and approached that great personality, that person said, "No, I will not give you this diksha mantra. You're not qualified for it. The only person that can take this mantra should be completely free from all bad qualities like lust and greed and envy. And anyone that chants the mantra, they will be liberated from the material world." And so Ramanujacharya, he felt horrible because on one side he had the instruction to take the mantra from that person, on the other hand he was being rejected. And so it says that 19 times he went back and begged for that mantra, and it was only on the 19th time that the mantra was given. And so when the Guru gave that mantra, he said, "But this must be kept a secret." But Ramanujacharya was just meditating how his Guru told him that anyone who hears the mantra will be liberated from the material world. It was an 8-syllable mantra. And so he went out into the public square and he just loudly broadcast that mantra, and hundreds and thousands of people heard that mantra. And when his Guru challenged him on that, he explained his reason, and his Guru was actually appreciating that what a magnanimous, glorious person he was. Another story is, at one point Ramanujacharya wanted to teach detachment to his renounced sannyasi and brahmachari disciples. And he did it in a very interesting way. There was one time when the sannyasis and brahmacharis were taking bath, and Ramanujacharya, they had left their clothes on the side of the river or the pond or something. He switched around their clothes. And so when they came out from taking their bath, someone put on somebody else's clothes, and there was a great quarrel between them. "Hey, that's my dhoti. No, that's my dhoti. Why are you wearing my dhoti?" And so there was a quarrel between the devotees. And then he wanted to show, that renunciation is not just an external formality. He called one of his disciples, I think that was Dunner Das, and he called him to the temple, and he instructed his brahmachari. He said, "What you should do is, you should go to the home of this devotee, this grihastha devotee, who is so sunk in the deep dark well of material life, and you should steal the valuable jewels from his home. And then when he comes home, he will be very disturbed, and then you'll see how horrible the grihasthas are and how attached they are to their material possessions." So the brahmachari went to the home of that grihastha. The grihastha was serving in the temple, and the wife, she was taking rest on the bed. And so the brahmachari, he very quietly tried to steal the jewelry off of her body. And when he stole all the jewelry off of her body, somehow or other, the woman, she changed the position of her body. Like, sometimes when someone sleeps, in the middle of their sleep, they may switch their position. But the brahmachari got very scared. "Oh my God, I think she woke up." And so he ran out of the house. But he did what he as instructed by Ramanujacharya, he stayed outside to hear what would be the reaction of Dunner Das. So when the devotee came home, he discussed with his wife, and his wife said, "Prabhu, is everything okay at the temple?" And he said, yes, I think everything is okay at the temple. Why are you asking about that? She said, well, I think that the devotees at the temple, they must really be struggling for money, because one of the brahmacharis came here and he stole the jewels from my body. And he said, oh, so what did you do? She said, well, I tried to turn my body so that he could take the jewels from the other side of my body as well, because I thought, they would only come and take these jewels if they were really poor and they really needed these jewels. So I just wanted to offer them everything that we had. Okay, so then what happened next? Well, he got scared and he ran away. And so then that husband was chastising his wife and said, this is horrible. You've completely failed. Why did you scare away that brahmachari? You should have been more careful so that he could take everything from us. You've only given half of your jewels to him. This was a great mistake on your part. You should have done it in such a way that he could take all of your jewels. So in this way, the brahmachari was completely astonished that these grihastas were so surrendered and so renounced that they were ready to give absolutely anything. And the lesson was that the sannyasis and brahmacharis were, so attached to their just to their ragged, simple cloth, while the grihastas were ready to renounce and give everything in the service of their guru. I'll just read one more thing. Please forgive me for going over time. The last instruction of Ramanujacharya before his passing, just something very beautiful. His instructions were, always remain in the company of and serve those souls devoted to Godhead, just as you would serve your own spiritual preceptor. Have faith in the teachings of the Vedas and in the words of the great saints. Never become the slaves of your senses. Always strive to conquer the three great enemies of self-realization, lust, anger, and greed. Worship Narayan and take pleasure in uttering the holy names of God as your only refuge. Sincerely serve the devotees of Godhead. By service to the great devotees, the highest service is done, and one quickly gains the supreme mercy. Remembering these things, you should live happily in this world for the attainment of the next. Hare Krishna. Shri Ramanujacharya ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Please forgive me for going over time. Thank you very much for your attention. Jai Jai Nitai Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bo.